Like, I've dedicated my Twitter feed to exposing the fact that free energy has been hidden. Like, I discovered that Google had a cold fusion lab when I discovered that they were censoring another cold fusion site. And so it's like, when someone's like, oh, the world's going to end because we're using carbon, it's just like, I see that person, I'm like, dude, like, it's by design. Like, free energy exists. Like, it's being held back. They're trying to inflict trauma on you. Like, if we can expose this, then it's a little uncomfortable for some people, but they're like, oh man, like, yeah, like, wait a minute, there's free energy and we can have this abundance, and there's two different cancer cures at least that exist, vitamin B17 and GC-MAF, MAF, macrophage activating factor. Then they're like, they get activated, and then they look at it, and then like the whole key to their existence sort of like unlocks. Like, okay, these people, they're not leaders, they're magicians. Okay? And they're not even like these people on TV, Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump, like they're using, like, they won't tell you the truth. They use words that are divisive, and they're playing tricks on all of us. And if we can activate people and we're just like, hey, no, look, like they're suppressing free energy. Here's the proof. And once people see that, then what they see is that they see these people on television, and they're like, no. You're just a magician with a cheap trick, and you're just like some bought off, like, blackmailed individual, like, pushing a narrative. Things that we do contribute towards moving our society to one that is controlled by a ruling oligarchy. Now we've got like this fake democracy that is that's in the Western world and throughout a lot of the different world. Monarchies tend to be a little bit more stable, but the most stable state that was ever created was in Egypt. And that form of government is what I call a cult state. And the cult state lasted for 5,000 years. It's my belief that the ruling oligarchs of the world are trying to get us back into a cult state where the leader is aligned with God and everybody worships them. And if you don't, then you get brutally punished. In Egypt, if you didn't, like the pharaohs, you try to rebel against them, they would shut off your water, and then everyone's dead in 3 days because it's a freaking desert, right? That's the kind of world that the ruling elite wants to recreate. And the only way that they can convince us to give up our democracy and overthrow the Constitution is they got to make things really bad. They got to traumatize us a lot. And then the solution, the atonement, is overthrowing the government and putting the globalists in charge of running things, right? You create the wars, you create the shortages. And the thing is that what we have to realize is that the scarcity of health, the scarcity of energy, the scarcity of being able to get ahead and prosperity, these are all artificially created. Because the thing is that if we realized our full potential as human beings, then the thing is that we're not going to live in a world of trauma. Well, guess what? We can't be controlled in a state of abundance because it's just like, people are going to be like, hey, let's all collectivize under a one world totalitarian socialist government. People are like, no, my life's really good. Why would I want to do that? Then with global warming, I thought that was like totally happening. And then I got real information and I was just like, oh, wow, that's just a scheme and a hoax to make us pay a carbon tax and to make us feel guilty, like it's trauma-based programming. And so as a result, I come on this new realization. I'm like, wow, that there's been a sophisticated censorship regime against these really experts in climatology. They're like, oh yeah, it's just a scam, right? And here's the graph. And then you find out that the hockey stick graph that Al Gore was pushing in his movie Inconvenient Truth, that the guy behind that has been in an 8-year lawsuit because his graph was completely based off of junk data that he won't even release. He has never released it since And he actually got sued in order to release it, and he still hasn't released it. And you can go look it up. Michael Mann is the guy, and
there are certain things that are totally that are happening though about the parts per million of CO2 in our atmosphere, and the
CO2 is not a contributing factor. It's not a significant contributing factor to global warming.
And also the acidification of our oceans. We have issues with the amount of phytoplankton that are the ones that are contributing to the oxygenation of our planet, and our trees that are contributing to oxygenation.
So
these are important. It's just called the Anthropocene for a reason. I mean, humans have absolutely become the single most contributor.
If we want to get rid of it, so
planet.
there's a guy by the name of John Mayer. He was an oceanographer, and in 1980 he went to the climatology summit, and he said, I've discovered that the phytoplankton in the oceans are not bottlenecked on the amount of CO2. They're bottlenecked on the amount of available iron. And he's like, I've discovered a process where if you just sprinkle iron into the ocean, it will create a phytoplankton bloom. And this is the reason why there's a phytoplankton bloom that happens after a volcano explodes. Oh, and by the way, if you increase the phytoplankton, you increase the zooplankton, you're going to increase the sardines, you're going to increase, and then everything else feeds off of that. And you get this huge food bloom, like this life bloom that happens
by feeding them iron.
By seeding the water with iron. Guy died of mysterious causes, and there was a revival of his research in the early 2000s, and then the UN got together and they're like, oh yeah, we're now banning iron ocean fertilization in all waters internationally. Boom, right? Nobody ever talks about this stuff.
And so, as an insider, I follow QAnon, and so I fully expected that in 3 days, all the QAnon accounts would be wiped off of YouTube. And so every single day, I was sitting on there doing a search on Google's internal search engine, is this the day that the leftists are going to figure out about this QAnon thing that's happening and they're going to get rid of it? Day after day after day, I saw nothing until one day I did see something. And there was a bug report that got generated, and it said, hey, there's this Q account. They're doing fake news. We need to get rid of it. And then it was like, comment as they were implementing that censorship. And then at the last hour before the censorship would have taken place, someone jumped on that wasn't part of the comment thread. And they stated, there's been a policy decision change, and we're going to let this account stay up.
Wow.
And I went, who made that decision? And who came from somewhere? So, if QAnon was really something that the deep state was against and having this war at this point, then it would just all be gone. We wouldn't even be able to hear about it. The links would not work when you put it in your Facebook Messenger, and no one would report on this. That's what I think would be happening if it was, if the deep state was really in a fight against Trump. At this point, the only thing that I can see is that Trump is basically holding the puppet strings, or the people that are controlling Trump are holding the puppet strings of both the left and the right now. And let's face it, if the left wanted to win, they would have put Bernie Sanders in charge, right? You got Biden, okay, creepy Biden, that wrote and authored the prison pipeline with his super predator laws. You've got Kamala Harris, who put them away into prison.
Kamala.
That's the people that are running on the left. There's no way that the left is really putting up a real fight. In fact, I'm going to lose money because I put bets on the prediction market that Biden was going to be swapped out. And if Biden isn't going to be swapped out before November 1st, then the whole thing is controlled by the guys that control Trump. We're in a false dialectic, and all this stuff is fake. And the predetermined thing is that Trump's going to get the next 4 years as the next president of the United States.
I agree.
Well, that's despite them trying to do their corruption with the mail-in voting.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it's all smokescreen, though. I think there's no. Well, my opinion, anyway, is that there is no left and right. It's just a giant smokescreen, so that in the background the oligarchs can just fucking do whatever they want. So
Well, to create divide and conquer also.
yeah, so they keep us fighting about COVID and mail-in this and abortion that and masks and fucking you name it.
But isn't that what's confusing? Because I agree with you 100%. But like we said, there are examples where Trump actually does do
Well,
things.
there has to be, because this is the thing, is like coming into Trump, they were losing everybody. Like, you know, you had Obama kind of, and nothing really happened, but he was kind of smooth enough and he was black that everyone could just kind of fucking forget about politics for a while. And we can just let these guys run the place. And I think that was kind of dangerous for them, is because like no one was arguing enough and they were kind of losing that. So they needed Trump's kind of the polar opposite of Obama. They need someone to come in there and rile everybody the fuck up. And if he doesn't give us a couple things, then we're going to start, you know, what they can't have is everyone turn on Trump, and they can't have everyone love Trump. So he's always going to ride that line of, you know, just keeping everyone pissed off enough that we can't notice what's actually going on in the background. And he's going to ride that line of, you know, just keeping everyone pissed off enough that we can't notice what's actually going on in the background. And to think that they were going to give up this for 4 more years of this, I mean, they can't have imagined it was going to go this well.
Yeah, but you think he went to the World Economic Forum and to UN then and specifically said that he's not going to accept this globalist agenda? Like U.S. is going to be free, so that's all just theater then?
Yeah, I think it's hard to think about, because, and that's just the thing. There's nobody else that could fucking pull off what Trump just pulled off with the American people and not have a bunch of people with guns out in the streets storming, in my opinion, the fucking White House.
And the entertainment for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 4 years straight, that guy can get out there.
And QAnon helps out as well. That's all extra fodder to keep, you know, the us, the crazies at bay, because, you know, we're the ones who are going to cause a problem.
Gigantic Trump fan. I mean, all my activism started. But with Trump, he's able to get stuff through that no one else can get through, you know, to a lot of the other commenters' points. And my big thing, I came in through the Ron Paul revolution and end the Fed. I mean, the Federal Reserve has now doubled in size. We've taken a third of all mortgages are now on the Fed's balance sheet. All the corporate bond, not all the corporate bonds, but a lot of the corporate bonds are now on the Fed's balance sheet. Even junk bonds, they're levered up 7 to 1. This is a corporate, basically bank bailout. And then, you know, and somebody was talking about, you know, whether this is the government doing it or private companies. Well, they're so intermixed right now. The former head of the NSA, Keith Alexander, is now at Amazon. So when I was pointing out that guys like Gary Cohen were getting in early 2016 as Trump's first economic advisor, and why is a Hillary Bundler, Goldman Sachs, carbon tax credit guy, chief Trump economic advisor? Why is he in there? I didn't work my ass off to get a guy like him in there. And then why is Jerome Powell in there, who's, you know, they, them, those, in there with all the elites for years and years and years, who was a disciple underneath Janet Yellen, and then he puts him in there. And I was constantly told, shut up, you know, Trump's trusted plan. I mean, my initials are TTP, trusted plan, and I don't trust his plan. And it's just very disheartening, because I kept telling him, you know, shut up, and he knows more than you. But, you know, my main thing is the Fed, and I've seen that there's been more debt taken on through the Fed in the past 6 months than the past, 100 years. And so for me,
I think they might actually wind down the Fed and just replace it with this new digidollars regime. So it'll look like you could say Trump ends the Fed. Like, I'm with you 100%.
And that's going to be even worse, because
I know, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. And they'll still say, oh, he did it. That's what you wanted. Isn't that good enough for you? And you forgot Wilbur Ross, who was the Rothschild guy. He's in his administration,
and the very first Maxine Waters $1,200 bank or stimulus program was actually, if you read the bill, was actually meant to be a digital dollar through the Federal Reserve .now account. You also had the former Coinbase, I think it was either CTO or one of the top Coinbase, which is the largest U.S. cryptocurrency exchange, is now the head of the Office of Comptroller Currency, went in place April 1st of this past year. And so, I mean, they're getting all the pieces in place, and they're eventually going to make it where you can't, travel unless you get the vaccine, because it's going to be tied through social credit and social engineering. And I also moved out of New York, so I guess we can join the Union of the Former New Yorkers panel over here. But
as they drive people in to take all their retirement money away with the volatility in the market, destroy businesses, take their jobs away, those DigiDollars aren't just going to be so that you can get on a plane. They're going to be so you can get on the food line.
I am hopeful, in the end, because eventually it's going to create censorship-resistant media. But in the interim, I think that the main battle here is whether or not we take this Federal Reserve dollar, because once they get us on that system, it's game over at that point for everyone that's sucked into that.
Now, 9 trillion has been printed during the past few months. Look, since September 2019, research shows the Federal Reserve has pumped over 9 trillion to the primary dealers by leveraging enormous emergency repo operations. This is insane. Absolutely insane. A recently published investigative report shows the US Central Bank submits the daily loan tally, but the Fed will not provide the public with information concerning the recipients, all right? This has a lot to do with the Fed operations. And we really started to cover this story already in late 2019 when this repo madness started to go wild. And that repo has everything to do with how banks lend money to each other and the interest rates when they do, all right? Some banks, at the end of the day, they lack liquidity, so you need to borrow it from other banks. And this market normally operates without the Fed. But during the past year, since late 2019, we do see some severe problems in the repo market. Banks don't want to lend to each other, and a lot of these financial institutions, they don't have the liquidity needed at the end of the day, which they're supposed to have. So the Fed has to step in and provide this liquidity. Now, the problem is that there is no transparency. Zero transparency. We don't know which banks it is that are getting this kind of money. We don't know that. And the thing is, many of them might already be insolvent, and we don't know that. All right? Some of the biggest banks already might be struggling for the past year, and we don't know that because we don't get this insight. Estimates say in 2020 alone, and this is, by the way, even outside of all the stimulus that we saw to support the economy. This is just the repo operation we're talking about. Estimates say in 2020 alone, the US has created 22% of all USD issued since the birth of the nation. It's insane. Insane. If you put it in this perspective, it is insane, okay? There is this saying, it's even a quote, maybe you guys can remind me which book or which story, which novel it is from. Basically, a guy asks another guy, how did you become so poor? And he answered, well, slowly, then suddenly. I love it. Maybe you guys can find who said it. It's a famous quote. I became poor very, very slowly at first, then all at once. Something like that. I love it. The US Federal Reserve has printed massive amounts of funds in 2020 and bailed out Wall Street special interests during the last 7 months. It's insane. It's always like that. You and I, we work for money. We work, spend time at the job. We don't go to our family, we don't spend time with our family. We work for money. Well, if you guys can create money and give to their friends. This is exactly what's happening, and they don't tell us who they give the money to. It's insane. I don't think this is how money is gonna work. This is why Bitcoin is so important. The fact that some guys can print money and everyone else has to work for money, and they don't tell us who they give the money to. How insane is that? I think future generations will look at us and think that we had something wrong in our brains, that we allowed this to happen. On October 3rd, 2020, Redditors from subreddit RBC shared a video called Is Hyperinflation Coming? And this one became quite big, this from Economics Explained. You should watch it, because they also speak about the fact that it is very significant inflationary events that we're witnessing and how this might unfold. So just search Economics Explained Is Hyperinflation Coming, which is a very important. And they actually look at it in a very nice way, all right? They don't do this mental gymnastic you normally see on the news that, no, it's fine, guys. We print, but it's fine. Let's do some mental. They explain it in a nice way.
This country for a long time. That you have a private network run by George Bush and Ollie North, not the
Not the CIA. You won't find the records in the CIA. They're not there. They're in these privatized intelligence agencies. Will you pursue that? Will you pursue Ollie North and George Bush and the mass?
He was bang on. Private intelligence networks. Not the CIA, not the FBI, not the DIA. Private intelligence networks, always intimately linked with Army intelligence. The documents are not in the CIA because it's not really the CIA running these operations. It's Army intelligence and it's private, off-the-books contract operators. The same ones that run ISIS, run drugs out of Afghanistan, run kill squads that get rid of pesky bankers and billionaires who know too much. Not to mention the odd journalist. One of those private mercenary groups is the infamous Blackwater group run by Eric Prince, personal friend of Alex Jones. Prince is now doing serious business in China, which is interesting given Jones' China rants lately. Central to the drugs, guns and money laundering are, you guessed it, casinos. And yes, we're getting closer to Trump and who and what he represents. A casino exists for a bare few reasons. One of those reasons is to launder drug money, but also any monies taken from various deep state operations, from drugs to weapons to sex slaves to organ trafficking. And there is one country that specialises in all of these. Despite the passage of 2 years and the horde of hardcore Israeli first and neocons who surround and support Trump, despite his well-known personal friendship with Benjamin Netanyahu, his son-in-law's close friendship with the lunatic and incredibly powerful Russian Jewish organised crime sect of Chabad Lubavitch, despite Trump and his father's lifelong association with New York mob boss Roy Cohen and the New York, New Jersey Jewish mob, we still find a vast army of Trump supporters in complete denial of who and what Trump is, and the vast Jewish Zionist organised crime network he fronts for. In the excellent production of Trump is the Swamp, Truth Media Revolution production lays it out for you. This video hit over 150,000 views and then disappeared. It has been re-uploaded. Here is a section detailing just who is behind Trump. Enjoy.